Hey, cool.
All
Thanks,
right. Hello.
Cassie.
Yes, I'm just going to do a brief housekeeping. I want to again thank you all for joining. This webinar again will be recorded, uploaded to our NAMI Greater Cleveland YouTube page. We ask that you can remain muted throughout the presentation just to avoid background noise and make sure everybody is able to hear everything, take in the information. If you do have a question, feel free to utilize the chat. Or as I said, I'll stop the recording at the end and we can do a brief Q&A with Maddie then. This does qualify for a free one CEU. This is eligible for counselors and social workers and marriage and family therapists. So at the end, I'm going to share an evaluation link. And whether you're here for a CEU or not, we would love your feedback. It is really helpful for us to get your feedback and to hear topics that maybe you're looking for us to explore in the future. But this is especially important to complete if you are here for a CEU so that you can include your license number and we can get that evaluation and the CEU inputted for you. So as a reminder, you have to attend the whole webinar if you are here to receive that CEU. Just briefly, for anyone not familiar, NAMI Greater Cleveland stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. At NAMI Greater Cleveland, our mission is dedicated to empowering those living with mental illness, as well as their family members and loved ones, to achieve a better quality of life by providing education, support, information, referral, and advocacy. So we will offer support groups and education opportunities like this one, both for folks who are living with mental illness, as well as family members and loved ones and professionals here in our community. So the last piece that I always want to highlight is our helpline. We have recently been able to expand our helpline. So now it runs Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Fridays, 9 to 5. Our helpline is staffed with trained volunteers and interns who provide assistance with locating a variety of resources, whether that's linked to mental health or just community resources for housing, employment, legal advice, all of those pieces. So I'll share the link to our website where you can learn more about our programs, and also our helpline phone number in the chat so you can keep those and check us out more following this webinar. So thank you again. And with that, I'll turn it over to Maddie.
Cool. Thank you, Cassie. I'm going to share my screen. Or am I?
I do have your slideshow. I know it'll be, but I can click through it if you're, let me see. Yep, you are there.
Just a little strange. It's saying um, unknown source, but the source is my computer. So I don't know why that is an issue.
Mhm. Do you want me to share the slides for you?
If you don't mind, I wonder if I messed something up when I updated Zoom this
That's
morning.
no problem. No problem. Okay, let me put that up here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I able to click through it though if you're screen sharing?
No.
Okay. All right. So I have to be that guy and ask you next slide.
Yeah,
All right. Well, teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you.
no
Um,
problem.
Hi, folks. Thanks for bearing with us through a little technology hiccup to start the day. My name is Maddie. Cassie did a great job introducing NAMI, and I'll introduce myself in a minute. But today, what we're here for is we are talking about the physiological and psychological effects of grief. This is a topic that I really enjoy presenting on. grief work comes up a lot in therapy and a lot in the mental health field in general, whether it is grieving a person or grieving the loss of a loved one, a pet, a physical being here with us, or grieving something a little bit less tangible. So, this is a topic that I think is really interesting, and hopefully, you do too. This is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about some key terms in grief work. We're going to talk about the stages of grief, which is like a pretty widely debated thing. How many are there and what are they? But we will talk about the main framework of the 5 stages of grief. We will talk about signs and symptoms, like the title says, physiological, psychological, and also some social and behavioral signs and symptoms of grief. And we'll end on strategies for supporting someone through grief, what that can look like as a loved one or a support system member. Next slide, please. Cool. So this is me. I am Maddie, she, her pronouns, like I said before. I have been a social worker since 2017. I've been uh, a therapist for about as long now. Some of my earliest like field placements and training opportunities were as a therapist. So it's been almost a decade, which is pretty wild to think about. I graduated from CASE with my master's. And right now, my main job outside of NAMI is private practice in Cleveland Heights. I see clients here at my office that you can't see because I blurred the background just to make it a little less visually cluttered. I see clients here Monday through Friday. Next slide. Cool. So, what is grief? This is a term that's thrown around a lot, and often we wonder, what really does it mean? Grief is a term that we use to describe the emotion someone experiences after a loss. Like I said before, it can refer to losing a person, someone who meant a lot to you, can refer to losing something else, something more abstract. And emotions around grief can vary, as we'll get into a little bit later. Often, when we think of grief, we think of sadness, we think of crying, we think of depression. And certainly, that's one way that grief can manifest, but it also can look a lot different. Next slide. Next slide, too. Thank you. Oh, back one. Thank you. Okay. So, one type of grief that doesn't get touched on a lot, but I think that many of us have experienced, is called anticipatory grief. And what this looks like is when someone is experiencing the emotions of grief, whether that is sadness, anger, um, anxiety, fear, before the person that they are grieving has left us. So, this often comes up in cases of somebody who has a terminal illness. It can be experienced by their caregivers or their loved ones. And in recent years, we've had more discussion about anticipatory grief among medical professionals. So, people in professional caregiving roles who are caring for terminally ill people. Um, it makes a lot of sense to me as a mental health provider, and maybe to you too, that being around the anticipated loss of people at a really high frequency in a professional setting where you have to show up a certain way, where you have to, put on a professional veneer, professional face, it can really cover up a lot of how that work affects you. It's certainly something that among social workers, we're talking about a lot more these days. So when we talk about grief work, we're not just talking about losing your grandfather, losing a spouse, losing a person in your personal life. We're also talking about some of the aspects of grief that are a little bit less visible. Next slide. What is bereavement? Bereavement is another term that often gets used interchangeably with grief, but it's not quite the same thing. Bereavement, the term comes from the root of the word comes from words meaning to be robbed or to be deprived of. So we think of bereavement as this aspect of grief where something has been taken from you. Like you are bereaved of your loved one, you are bereaved of the life that you were going to have with them, you're bereaved of that possibility, that future. Um, so when we talk about grief, loss, and bereavement, these are different aspects of the same experience. Next slide. So, in bereavement, which is, like I said, that experience of having something taken, we talk about both grieving and we talk about mourning. Grieving is the psychological components of bereavement. So, that is the psychological process of like adjusting to a loss. I was just talking with someone recently about uh, the experience of like walking through your house and seeing objects that have been put there by a loved one who has passed. And like, what is it like to, find somebody's sweatshirt that they balled up and left on the floor? Um, and then a week later, they're no longer alive. That can be a pretty unexpected reminder of the loss. And there are many of those when you lose someone that kind of catch you off guard. The process of grieving is the flexibility and the adjustment around those reminders. Mourning is a little bit different. Mourning is the actions and the way that we express our grief. So you can mourn to grieve, if that makes sense. When we think of mourning, we often think of things like funerals, calling hours, grief support groups. We talk about different rituals or routines that might even be culturally or religiously influenced, and how those accompany that culture's view of death, grief, and loss. There's a really fantastic book called From Here to Eternity. I cannot remember the author's name for you right now, but I can think of it later. That is about different cultures' approaches to mourning and how their different mourning rituals help members of that culture move through grief. So, in some places, they might take a period of time where they abstain from certain activities. In some cultures, there might be a really robust celebration of life. There might be a period of dressing a certain way or even eating or drinking a certain way as a way of honoring and really sitting with those painful emotions that can come with grief. So, grieving, that's the psychological process. Mourning, that's more physical, tangible expressions of grief. Next slide. Thank you. So, like I said before, bereavement can vary across cultures. Is the culture that you come from more expressive in their emotions, or is it more controlled? Are there mourning traditions things that happen in public versus in private? The colors that they wear or that they that are acceptable to be seen wearing at these different mourning rituals. Um, and again, like the different periods of observance around a loss are often very culturally influenced as well. In Judaism, people sit Shiva for a period of time where they are processing the loss, and people come to their home to sit with them to experience that loss and that mourning period alongside the bereaved loved ones. In Hinduism, there is a similar 13-day ritual period. I was talking about this recently with my family that I grew up in New England, and it's very common to have calling hours there. But that's not the case most places or other places in the country. Calling hours are very normal for us, where, there is I guess in some places it might also be called a wake, but there is a period of time where the family is at a funeral home and folks can kind of come and go during an afternoon period where they come and pay their respects and share memories of the lost loved one. Um, and this is meant to provide comfort to the family as well as to the person who is attending the calling hours. So again, really, it's very culturally, spiritually, even geographically influenced how we move through grief. Another aspect of grief that is not often talked about, and it might even be a little bit taboo, is disenfranchised grief. Again, this is a big term that really just refers to uh, grief from a loss that cannot be openly acknowledged. And when I say it cannot be openly acknowledged, I don't mean that it is forbidden expressly. I mean, it might be in some situations, but I'm more am referring to how we don't have great cultural scripts or examples, or it's not commonly talked about. And one example of this that I see a lot of in my practice is perinatal loss. When someone experiences a miscarriage or a stillbirth, we don't have a great example of how to respond to someone who has been through that type of loss in American culture. We often say things that are well meaning, but that kind of miss the mark when it comes to supporting that person. And disenfranchised grief is really about not being able to fully mourn or fully express that grief for fear of some kind of consequence, some kind of negative social consequence or fear of judgment from others. Some other examples would be loss of a pet. Um, Certainly, it's something that anybody who has animals will unfortunately go through. But again, like we really downplay just how severe and how intense that loss can be. Um, Another example would be loss of a body part. If somebody goes through, let's say, a mastectomy for breast cancer or preventative for breast cancer, the loss of those body parts can be pretty intense as well. I mean, this is part of your body that has literally been a part of you, has grown with you, you have carried it with you for your entire life thus far. And even if you're voluntarily having it removed for medical reasons, it is still something, a major change, a pretty radical shift in how you see yourself and how you see the world, in your relationship. Um, this can also look like grief accompanying disability status. So the grief of a shift in your capacity or your ability, or grief after losing someone to suicide. Um, One thing that NAMI really champions as an organization is supporting people after losing someone to suicide and supporting people who have experienced suicidality. And so I do think that that conversation is shifting a little bit, that we are a little bit less afraid of talking about suicide. But because disenfranchised grief comes from a loss that is so difficult to speak about and so rarely exemplified, it really adds to the the feeling of despair and isolation that can come with this loss. Um, Next slide, please. So some of the features that come with disenfranchised grief are a little bit different than regular traditional, I guess, like more visible grief. When someone goes through disenfranchised grief, they might withdraw socially due to not knowing how to talk about it or not feeling like there's a place to talk about it that is safe and understanding. That can lead to loneliness. It can lead to relationship strain. I mean, I guess it kind of follows logically that if somebody goes through a loss and really pulls back from their friendships or their relationships, that that might start to take a toll after a while. That feeling of pushing things down, of isolating, can lead to emotional numbness. I mean, if I'm never given a venue to talk about the things that I'm going through and I'm alone with my feelings all the time, numbing out might be a way of getting through that really painful, really difficult experience. And then sleep disturbance is also quite common when somebody has gone through disenfranchised grief or a loss of this caliber. The aspect of the grief being uh, isolated, being invisible, being unspoken, really amplifies the psychological experiences that that person can have afterwards. So when we talk about disenfranchised grief, we are talking about a loss that doesn't have a place to be expressed, or that um, we don't have good tools for supporting yet. Next slide. So let's talk about the 5 stages of grief. These were created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a therapist and researcher around grief for many, many, many years. And this is probably one of her most notable contributions to the field. Kubler-Ross wrote that, I love the heart, wrote that there are 5 stages of grief. The first being denial of the loss, the second being anger at the loss, the third being bargaining, like with a higher power, with oneself, with the universe at large, trying to mitigate the loss in some way. The fourth is depression, and the fifth is acceptance. So even just looking at this list, you can see on this image that I have, we at first, when we started talking about the stages of grief as a field, therapists and researchers often thought of grief as a process, a stepwise process. You start in denial. I can't believe she's gone. You move to anger. You move to bargaining. Then depression hits. Then eventually you arrive at acceptance. As much as I love a good flow chart as a therapist, this is not how most people experience their grief and their loss. So on the bottom here, you can see this kind of beautiful illustration that shows how, in a lot of ways, grief does not follow a linear stepwise process. And when it comes to supporting someone, having the language around the stages of grief can be really useful. Being able to say, what I'm feeling right now is anger. I am mad that this person was taken from me. That is a really powerful experience. One kind of corny thing that I say a lot to clients is name it to tame it. Maybe you've heard that one before. But I always add the caveat that just because we can name the stages of grief does not mean that you're going to follow it like a ladder or a people mover in the airport of life. It is often going to look a lot messier, and having the language can help us to navigate that messiness together. Next slide. So I love Brachita, the artist on Instagram. I love their depictions of different emotions and different experiences. And this is how they described grief in an image, that grief is loving you without you here. So there's this like big pink glowing center that is so warm and inviting. And then on the outside, it's kind of tinged with the reminder that it is without that person. So the headline here is that while the stages of grief can be really useful from an educational perspective for, just being able to name your experience, having vocabulary around it, there is no normal when it comes to grieving. That our goal here is not to follow a path laid out by psychological researchers to arrive at acceptance. It is just to navigate it and to feel our way through it. Next slide. This is a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. She has written many books. Her latest, which is a little bit controversial, so I don't know that I can endorse it fully, but it is about grief and loss of her wife. She wrote, grief has its own time frame. It has its own itinerary with you. It has its own power over you, and it will come when it comes. I like this quote a lot because often with the kind of like ubiquitousness, like the like awareness of the stages of grief, just out in the culture, I find that I have clients who will come in and say things like, I just lost a loved one, but I don't know why I'm not sad. I don't know why I haven't cried yet. I don't know why I just feel numb. And that can be for a number of reasons, but one is that grief hits when it hits. We can't predict it. We can't try to nail it down. We can't schedule it as much as we might want to or be used to over functioning like that. Like Elizabeth Gilbert writes, it has its own itinerary with you. And often when I work with these clients, what we find is like making space for whatever emotions are coming up around the loss means that it hits on a random Tuesday when they're at the grocery store and they see someone in a coat that reminds them of their mom. And it's been 6 months since that loss, but it hits when it hits. Next slide. So, signs and symptoms of grief. This is my tiny, pretty caveat that this is a list of common signs and symptoms. It is not prescriptive, it is not diagnostic. This is what is commonly seen and acknowledged as an experience of grief. It may look different for you or for the clients that you're working with or the people in your life. I've caveated the heck out of it. So next slide, please. Some of the physical symptoms of grief can take people by surprise. For one, there can often be a lot of physical feelings or sensations that go along with emotions. And that's not something that we really expect. So when therapists ask you things like, where do you feel that in your body? It's really easy to roll your eyes. And I've been known to do that too. But also, our emotions don't start and end up here, they are a whole body experience. So, physical symptoms of grief can look like dizziness, numbness, fatigue. I often hear from folks that it feels like wading through heavy water or it feels like moving in slow motion. It can feel like tension or tightness. It can feel like your body is rebelling against you, like some muscle weakness, or you just can't propel yourself to do the things that you need to do or to do the things as quickly or as efficiently as you did before. Um, and often, when folks are having all of these physical symptoms, that might be what they notice first. Um, Again, I say this almost every presentation, but uh, having an emotional vocabulary is a relatively new concept. We didn't teach social emotional learning in elementary schools until maybe 2010. Uh, I don't know about most of the people in this room, but that was well after I was out of K-12 school. And so if we think about it that way, noticing what's going on in our physical bodies first might be a way into developing that emotional vocabulary later on. So, starting with the physical, next slide, please. One really profound experience that I've actually had some clients have in their lives uh, is called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Very big medical name, but what it is an experience of really intense chest pain and shortness of breath, symptoms that can present almost like a heart attack. But when the person goes to the hospital, there is no physical evidence of a heart attack when they are tested with an EKG and when they are given a physical exam. And so, what this really is a response to really severe stress. When I have had clients experience this type of cardiomyopathy before, it has come on very suddenly. It's been very scary. It comes with a lot of anxiety and panic. The feeling of my chest is tight, my limbs are numb, my breath isn't coming as easily. Um, am I going to die? Am I okay? And it's often coming on the heels of a really severe, stressful event or a really sudden, unexpected loss. So that aspect of mortality is on their mind. Next slide, please. Psychological symptoms, we don't have as much clarity in how to identify, at least not as individuals. If you are in a helping profession, if you are in the medical or mental health field, maybe you have a little more familiarity with this with your patients or clients. But as just a everyday citizen, you may not. And also, I've often said to folks, especially when I treat therapists, you cannot therapize yourself. So you may be really good at this in what you do and still struggle to find these or to notice these symptoms in yourself. So, less visible are your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. And this is where I give it all away that I am a cognitive behavioral therapist, because that right there is the cognitive triangle. So, in the psychological symptoms of grief, it can look like your thoughts being very confused, being very ruminative, kind of thinking the same thing over and over again, being preoccupied either on the loss itself or on something that previously would not have captured your attention, being having a difficult time concentrating. Your emotions might feel like sadness, might feel like guilt, anger, hostility, restlessness, distractibility. And your behaviors might be out of character as well. Your executive function, like your ability to start and finish tasks, your ability to organize, to schedule, to use that kind of upper brain, that prefrontal cortex, those cognitive functions may be very off from what they usually are. You might have difficulty sleeping or wake up feeling not very rested because your brain is just super, super active all the time. You might have more aggressiveness, irritability, or loss of interest in your daily activities. And again, I'm running down this very long, very descriptive list. The important thing to take away is that it's not like diagnostic criteria that this person needs to meet one symptom in each category type, whatever. That's not it at all. Um, what I encourage folks to do is really notice like what is out of character for you or for the loved one that you're concerned about. So if your partner is very happy-go-lucky, like pretty upbeat, pretty motivated person, and then a couple weeks after a loss is sleeping all the time, is more irritable, you notice that you're getting into more arguments, that might be a sign that something is bothering them, that something is going on. And I know that when I put it like this, it sounds really simple, but um, oftentimes in relationships with other people, we don't notice that our behavior has changed, or we don't notice that there might be an underlying cause for that behavior. We think, oh, it must be me. I must have done something to start the argument. When, I mean, maybe, but more than likely, I mean, this major life event has just happened. Loss really reshapes everything for a person, how they see themselves, how they see their relationships, the world around them. Um, and yeah, I guess, headline from this slide is really to get curious about how someone's behavior after a loss might be different than it was before. Next slide. This quote is from Rose Kennedy, who was John F. Kennedy's mother, a woman who experienced pretty profound loss of children in her life. As parents, we don't often expect to lose our children in our lifetime, and so when we do, it is. I would argue that it is a form of disenfranchised grief. We don't have great cultural scripts around it. And Rose Kennedy said, "It has been said that time heals all wounds. I do not agree. The wounds remain. In time, the mind, protecting its sanity, covers them with scar tissue and the pain lessens, but it is never gone." Um, I like this quote from someone who has been through pretty extreme loss because I think it really exemplifies something that we talked about a little bit earlier, that experience of grief being non-linear, that it doesn't follow a set path. It's not a stepwise process. Over time, it's not that the wound heals or that the pain isn't there, that you don't feel anything anymore. It's that over time, you start to learn how to live with it. You start to learn how to carry it. It might become easier to do that. So, great question. One that often comes up in clinical settings and in life. When does my grief become clinically significant? When does it become more than what's quote unquote normal? Next slide. So, one thing that we talk about in the field is prolonged grief. Um, this is not necessarily a like recognized in the ICD-11 or DSM-5 diagnostic manuals disorder, but it is a category of symptoms that we can use as a description. So, in the case of prolonged grief, it's not quite the same thing as major depression or even persistent depression, which is a depressive episode that lasts for a significant period of time. Prolonged grief is an experience of grief where the symptoms last for longer than 1 year for adults or 6 months for kids under 18, where the person is not able to incorporate the grief and loss into their new reality. Meaning that if we think back on that quote a couple of slides ago, they are really struggling to learn how to integrate the loss and the grief into their new life, how to carry that weight. Next slide. So that is a really difficult process. Learning how to carry the weight of grief and loss. I mean, it even just saying it, I feel like my chest gets heavy. It's kind of it is a hard psychological thing to do. So often when somebody is dealing with prolonged grief, they seek support. As they should, in my biased opinion. They deserve it. You deserve it. If any of this is resonating with you, you deserve support. Um, but often people are a little bit nervous. Like, what on earth does grief therapy look like? Am I going to have to do something I don't want to do? um, my answer to that is hopefully not. I really strive with my clients to make sure that therapy is led by you. But to give a little bit of context about what grief therapy does, it can look like learning about the stages of grief, like we said before, naming it to tame it, having some language around what is going on, how it shows up. It can look like developing some coping strategies. So, for example, that example that I gave a little while ago of seeing someone in the grocery store and it reminds you of the person that you have lost. And that brings up some painful emotions and makes it really hard to stay in the situation and just buy your groceries, live your everyday life. Maybe in grief therapy, what we would do is figure out some things that might be triggers for the grief, figure out some ways to cope ahead of time, um, figure out some rituals that might help you to gain closure with the loss. Um, Often, grief therapy also can look a little bit more abstract than that as well. We're answering questions like, what does my life look like now? Like without this person or without this like meaningful part of my life, what on earth am I going to do now? It can look like figuring out and reconstructing your identity. Who am I without this person? And part of how you do that is creating safety and trust with your therapist, feeling like, okay, this isn't just another appointment that I have to go to because whatever. This is a person that I feel like I can trust with my big, messy, painful, uncomfortable emotions that I don't even really want to look at. That way, I might not want to do it, but I am able to do it. I am willing to do it because it is good for me. Next slide. So, how do you support someone through grief? If you're not a therapist or if you're dealing with someone in your life that you want to support, these last few slides will give you some ideas. Number one, make yourself available. Again, seems really obvious, but offering support when you can and letting the grieving person know that you are here and doing that regularly, I think is really important. I often like to offer when somebody is going through something really hard, a menu of options. This can look like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store today. I was thinking of you. Do you want me to pick anything up for you? It could also look like offering literally bullet points. I have done this before in my own life of, hey, I know that the holidays are really hard for you, and I'm thinking of you and I love you. Do you want to grab coffee and talk? Or do you want a distraction? Or if you just want to be alone, can you like send me an emoji so that I know so that I have proof of life? Would you let me send you a gift card to go get coffee by yourself sometime? Like something that you are able to do to let that person know you are there and you are a safe place for them to open up. Next slide. My numbering got a little off. Number two, be present. Um, Reducing your distractions and giving the person your full attention as much as you can within reason is really important. Oftentimes, people who have gone through grief and loss feel like they are worried about being a burden on others, or they are worried about, is it appropriate for me to be talking about this? Does this person really want to hear it? And so the way to reassure that person is to act like you really want to hear it. Um, Part of this is being reliable. Don't make offers that you can't fulfill. If you are not actually going to the grocery store, but you were going to make a special trip for that person, and then you can't because you got called into work at the last minute, even though it might have nothing to do with that person, it could send the message of, oh, they're not actually that available. I should probably not burden them. So, again, being present, not checking your phone if you can help it, not being distracted if you can help it, just showing up as best you can, as presently as you can. The third one, and this I see a lot, don't try to fix the grief. The person isn't broken. I know that, again, that sounds super obvious, but many of us have a very problem solving attitude when it comes to uh, painful situations. It is not a bad impulse. Like it makes perfect sense that when you see someone who is suffering, who you care about, you want to make it better. But the thing that would actually make it better is for you to be able to sit in the painful emotions with that person. Because the other thing that would make it better to have not gone through the loss at all is not possible. So problem solving might sound like you just need to get out of the house more. Let's go for a walk, trying to, encourage the person to get on with life, to get up, get moving, do the things. Holding space might look like offering that same walk, but saying, I love you and I'm here for you. And you don't have to put on a brave face for me. If we go for this walk, you can be grumpy and sad the whole time. You can be in literally sweatpants or pajamas, and I will still be there. Another thing to keep in mind is to be sincere, to be engaged, and be empathetic. Um, One thing that I say to folks in therapy often is like other people have better BS detectors than we give them credit for. Um, when we are not being sincere, when we're not being real and we're acting a little phony, other people can tell. And so asking people questions and genuinely listening to what they are saying is the best way to let them know that you are engaged and that you really do want to be there for them. This can look a lot of different ways. I gave you a couple examples here. One would be like asking people to tell you about the person that they are grieving. Another could be to offer some empathy, offer your own experience. I always feel sad around the holidays because they remind me of my brother. I was thinking of you. How have they been for you this year? Again, like be real. This might not sound like your voice because I'm the one who wrote it, but I believe that you can use your big, beautiful, smart brain and make it sound like you in a way that is authentic. Next slide. Last thing I believe is make an effort to stay connected to the person. It is hard to show up regularly, but as is going around social media quite a bit these days, the cost of community is inconvenience. So, if we want to have strong relationships with the people in our lives, I mean, as a relational therapist, I think that we have to put in the effort. So, even if staying connected looks different than it used to with this friend or with this loved one, it can still be a positive thing. It can still be a relationship that is really healing for both of you. So, grievers might not feel super social or outgoing. They might not want to do the same things, that they did before. They might not have the same capacity. Like, they might have, before their loss, been the type of person who loves to go out dancing on a Friday night and stay out till all hours. And that was how you guys used to have so much fun together. And now they get tired and want to go home after, just having dinner. That is okay. That's not necessarily a sign that something is horribly wrong. And you're not bad for noticing that things have changed. Um, it is really hard to rebuild and reconnect a friendship after something as catastrophic as grief and loss. Your person is still in there, I promise. And forming your new relationship with them is difficult, but so worth it, so valuable. So make an effort to stay connected with them. Instead of dancing, maybe for a couple months, you're going for walks. This is the end of my presentation part. Thank you guys for being such a great audience. I think the last slides are just references. But yeah, we have about 10 minutes left. I would love to open it up for questions.